The quality of the title is overwhelmed by the marketing. In its first week, what you're seeing is a huge flood of marketing from the studios. Maybe you haven't read the reviews. Maybe you hadn't had a chance to talk to people. Maybe you know, the sort of consensus view has not come in, and so you tend to just sort of, you know, you're seduced by the marketing because it works. And what they found is that the ratings on the new titles were significantly lower than the ratings for the old titles. So when you think about it, Blockbuster, which because of its need to stack them deep and high and to push, and the sort of studio-driven economics to push the new titles the most, are in the place where the movies cost the most and have the lowest and return the lowest satisfaction. Whereas Netflix is in the part where the movies in the older films, where they push the demand back over time, is in the part of the market where the movies cost the least and have the highest satisfaction. So Netflix is in the sweet spot of the industry, and Blockbuster is in the sour spot, simply because Blockbuster is driven by the tyranny of the new. Google is another interesting example of this. Will's in the was in the newspaper business, and I'm in the magazine business, and I can tell you that there's the notion that, you know, that the new news is the important stuff, and the old stuff is fish wrap is pervasive. There was the presumption that your front page is what matters. It's freshness. It's what's you know, right here now that is what's popular. But Google doesn't think that way. The way the Google algorithms work is that there's a number of factors that determine relevance, but one of the most important one is incoming links. You know, the consensus view on how important, relevant, and different content is. Older stuff has longer time to build up incoming links. Over time, the relevance, the quality, the sort of measured value of older stuff rises. And Google actually doesn't even, the spider doesn't even get to the new stuff. So Google almost, you know, traditional Google, obviously they have Google's News and Google Blog Search, but traditional Google won't even know anything over the first 48 hours. And then over time, things get more relevant, not less. So as we see more and more of the traffic to all of our sites driven by Google, we find that it's not going to the front page traditionally. It's not going to the new stuff. It's going to the old stuff. Here's some data just from my just from our own sites. We find that 66% of the search traffic is going to posts that are older than 1 month old. So 2/3 of it. And as a result, this is, just to unpack this, this is the new stuff here. This is the old stuff that comes from search, and this is the old stuff that comes from links. What you're finding here is that this bit right there is driving demand. This is the growing part here, the stuff that's coming from search, and it is traditionally, and as you just see, 2/3 of it is going to the old stuff, the stuff more than 1 month old. As a result, the archives are suddenly becoming really, really important. And you're seeing the balance of the traffic growth going to your old stuff. This is absolutely new, and suddenly it makes you realize that the presumption that there was no value, that you barely had to leave them online, you certainly didn't need to sell ads against them, is turning out to be completely wrong. We now realize that quality doesn't disappear over time. Instead, its recognition increases. I'll give you a few other examples before we end and turn to Will. The rise of print on demand is a real driver towards the backlist in books. Again, one of the problems with books is the notion of shelf space, the fact that the inventory cost of storing books is significant. How would you store books with near zero inventory? You store them as digital files and you print them on demand. Print-on-demand technology is basically just a big photocopier. But you know, today, you'll buy books from Amazon that are print-on-demand and you don't know it. You cannot tell. Their color, they have proper covers, they have charts, graphics. You can't tell they're not marked in any way. They just bought, Amazon just bought a print-on-demand company. There's 6 of them being started just this year. And what's fantastic about this is it not only allows you to take the older books and rather than taking them out of print, just taking them to print on demand. They cost nothing to store. You print in small batches, sometimes as little as 1 when required. And the price is a little bit higher, but not a lot higher, and the margins are positive because there's no costs. As it sits there, it doesn't gather dust. It doesn't exist, in a sense, until it's printed. What's important about this is that it not only allows them to monetize these archives, monetize the back catalog, but it also allows them to smooth out demand at the front. One of the big problems with the book industry is the notion of returns. One of the policies of books is that bookstores are allowed to return new titles for free if they don't sell. Why would bookstores overorder, grossly overorder? Because they want to make sure they don't run out. If the costs are borne by the publisher, they might as well overorder and pulp the rest, send it back for credits. However, there is a small cost because those books have to sort of sit in a warehouse, the bookstore's warehouse. So if they could avoid that, they would. They just don't want to run out. Well, right now we print books in big batches, 10,000, 20,000, 100,000. But if you could say, well, we're going to, it's not going to be 60,000 now and 60,000 6 months from now. It could be 60,000 now and as much as you need from now on. We can get it to you in 24 hours. We can print 30, 40, we can print 300, we can print 3,000 print on demand. We can smooth out the demand and you won't run out. Then the bookstores won't overorder. And so a technology that was designed to sort of unleash the value in the archive is actually going to have most of its economic impact in smoothing out demand at the head of the curve. That's a really important advance in an industry that's struggling. Movies right now, we're seeing the rise of very, very cheap DVDs. DVDs, again, especially through Amazon and Netflix, is a great way to distribute content without shelf space constraints. And there is demand. For television, you're seeing the rise of classic collections, which are, again, I Love Lucy or anything else. There is demand for this. Some of it's nostalgia, some of it's just good content. DVDs are a great way to distribute it. One little note, in our analysis, we have found that television represents the biggest divide between the amount of produced content and the amount of available content. The television model is one of just, produce it, it exists ephemerally. It's broadcast for a brief window and then disappears. The vast majority of television isn't syndicated. The vast majority of television hasn't made it to DVD. The vast majority of television wasn't TiVo'd. It's just gone. And yet it exists out there. And if you can clear the rights, which is something perhaps we may talk about a little bit more with Will, you find that there is an appetite for old TV, if only you can get it out there. A final example I wanted to give you is games. I'm a gamer, and I grew up in the generation that had the Nintendo and the Atari, and a lot of us think of this stuff very fondly. However, it's not available. If you don't have the original machine, you can't play the games. There's this notion of abandonware. The manufacturers actually not only don't sell them anymore, but they won't let anyone else sell them. They don't want to support it, and so they live in this netherworld. One of the reasons is that the retail channels don't support old games. They're niche products. They have a small demand, but very passionate demand. But there's a new distribution channel in video games. It's online marketplaces, and all three of the new consoles, the Xbox 360, the Nintendo Wii, and the Sony PlayStation 3, I'm all going to have broadband distribution of games. And Nintendo in particular is building an emulator for all of its old systems right into the machine. So every game they've ever made will be playable on the new machine. Distribution costs, inventory costs, near zero. There's demand for this, and we're finally able to tap them. So there's more of it in my book, which is coming out in July. But we can get into further detail, I think, by now turning to Will, who knows a lot about this. Will?